I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual. 起立，面向佛堂，参加先鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，参加各位的传世一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。
Mindfulness is something that can be done in many different ways. Probably the most popular one that most people know about is meditation, sitting meditation, but there are many other ways. So Bill, before I met Bill, he had a school where he taught Tai Chi all the time, and he also practices Qigong. Those are examples of mindfulness practice using movement and motion. So as the body is engaged in a particular movement, the mind is perfectly tranquil, perfectly quiet, and is actually in a restful state. Now, the simplest way though, because if you want to get into Tai Chi or Qigong or the other practices, the other disciplines like yoga, you would need more instructions. You would need to know how to move your body, what the positions look like, what postures look like. The simplest way to go still is sitting meditation. On the face of it, it seems like it's about as simple as something can be. You just sit around and quiet your mind. Now, there's actually subtleties to it, as we mentioned last time, and therefore I think it's important for us to explore the reasons, the how, the where, the what time, etc. Previously, we talked about the reasons why people would be interested in meditation. Let me just put in a personal note that for me, the primary motivation is mental. And you may think, well, probably spiritual, right? Well, they're related, and one affects the other. I have previously talked about how a person can be divided into the physical self, the mental self, and the spiritual self, but all of these different aspects of yourself are connected, intimately connected together. If you improve one of the three, the other two parts are likely to improve as well, or they will be looking for opportunities to improve. So most people come into that triangle of the three different aspects through the physical side. That's because when they start working out or have some sort of exercise regimen, maybe they start jogging, they feel great, they feel good, they feel more clear-headed. That's a manifestation of the physical improvements in your body starting to affect your mind, that you can actually think better. Now, the other way is also true. If you train your mind to become better, you can think better about your life, and then it may occur to you that, I really need to get off the couch. I really need to lose this beer belly, So they're connected in that way, and all of these have connections with the spiritual aspects. Previously, when I spoke of the spiritual aspects, I mentioned that one way to gauge your spiritual self is to look at your mate, is to look at your companion. And this companion, possibly your soulmate or your soul companion, someone who reflects the innermost part of you, the best part of you, that reflects your spirituality. And I also mentioned previously that your work, your occupation, tends to reflect the state of your mind. The better your mind is, the better your work. The more satisfaction you derive out of it, the better you do, the more profitable it becomes as a natural byproduct. So for me, my point of entry into meditation is actually the mental aspects. Recently, I mentioned that there are studies from Harvard University where they conduct the practice, coupling that with high-tech scanning methodology to discover that it is really true that when you meditate consistently for a period of at least 8 weeks, at least 20 minutes per day, preferably half an hour, then you literally get more brain matter to work with. Now, when I was growing up, that was not the scientific opinion at the time, because we always used to believe, like 20, 30 years ago, that the amount of brain cells that you get is limited. And therefore, as you're losing brain cells, you get older or you attend a particularly good party and get a buzz going and brain cells are dying left and right. So those brain cells you won't get back. Well, now we know more about neurology. We know more about the brain. We know about plasticity of the brain. That is, the brain itself will change and adapt and grow based on what you do with it. There's a little bit of a hint to that. When we see in medical science, there are many cases where serious brain lesion, we're talking about like soldiers on the battlefield who end up with a bullet through the brain, taking out quite a bit of gray matter, but they survive and they actually get better. And what case after case, what they uncover is that initially, because of some of that brain matter has gone, they have impairment. They've lost some functionalities. So perhaps they initially don't really remember who they are. They don't remember their family members, their loved ones. But in quite a few cases, those functions, those memories come back. So it seems, based on that the brain itself is a very versatile device that every part of it backs everything, every other part up. And some have compared it to a hologram. A holographic printed image, every part of it contains the image for every other part. So you can break it up and you can still see the entire hologram. So that's the idea. The holographic brain has become a concept that people are looking at in a very serious way. Now, I think that intelligence is probably the most precious and most important thing about the individual. It can be the root of everything else. As I mentioned, it can lead to greater physical improvements, spiritual improvements, etc. So that's what I know about. That's what I was interested in. Therefore, I got into meditation for that purpose. Your reason may be quite different. My reason was that, hey, I'd like to be able to do my work better. I'd like to be able to think better. I'd like to become a better version of myself. It doesn't change you, it enhances you. But the other reasons are equally good. You may look at these other reasons and say, yeah, I do deserve time set aside just for myself. Or, yeah, it's a reboot for my entire operating system. And when I'm done with the rebooting, I'll get rid of quite a few problems that I have before the reboot, just like it is with a computer. Even cell phone nowadays, if it's not working right, you want to power off and power it back on. A lot of times those problems won't go away. So my suggestion on setting up a place, previously we did a whole segment on having a sacred space at home. So for the Tao Cultivators, for instance, many of the Chinese-speaking Tao Cultivators on the other side of this wall, they have a shrine at home. So that becomes sort of a natural sacred space for them. What I would say is that even if you don't have that, there's nothing to stop you from designating a spot, setting aside a place where you say, that is my sacred space. That is where I can seek, safe harbor from the distractions and all the mental clutter from just living life from day to day. So I highly recommend that. I recommend that you find a place that is away from foot traffic, a place that you can set aside for yourself. It doesn't have to be really big. It could be just a little corner that you set aside for yourself. Some people will go further on that. They will set it up and have objects that will remind themselves to calm down, to be quiet, to focus your attention, etc. And I would say more power to you. Do whatever it is that helps you. Okay, so beyond that, I also spoke of the time in which to do the meditation. I personally find it most helpful to do it early in the morning. There's a couple of things that I do, and yet morning is not the recommendation that I give to most people. Morning was only possible for me when I had worked on myself for maybe about a decade. I had gotten to a point where I have reduced my need for sleep from the usual 8 to 9 hours to like 6 to 7. So suddenly I've freed up an hour early in the morning where I have that time all to myself. Morning time is a magical, special time, but I remember that before I got to that point, my mornings was just like everybody else's morning, hectic, in a rush. Oh my goodness, what am I have to do? What am I going to have to do today? Oh, I'm running late. Okay, so that rushing, that frantic, hurrying around is not very conducive to meditation, which is the reason why I actually don't recommend this for absolute beginners. I would say that in the beginning, the evening time is actually pretty good because it gives you a transition from wakeful consciousness to being able to quiet yourself down enough to get a restful night's sleep. So that's actually a pretty good idea. And the other recommendation that I have is maybe a little bit contrary to what most people say, and that is don't rush into joining a group. I recommend that you get to know yourself better before you join with other people. Now, the reason why I say that is connected to the next slide. The reason why I say that is because I have seen teachers of meditation provide others with what works for them. They may say, you got to put your hands up like this. They may say, you have to do this. What I would say instead is that if you begin with only yourself and keep it as simple as possible and see how it feels, you build a foundation. So you begin, I think it's healthier if you begin by understanding what works for yourself. If you try this and it's like, hey, wow, this is pretty good, I get something extra out of it, more power to you, stick with that, or this, or some other mudra. But if you just go into a group and you follow what that group does, and they can't really give you a satisfactory explanation as to why they do what they do, then that may not be the best use of your time. Having said that, let me also offer the other side. That is, when you do find a like-minded group to meditate with, the collective energy in the group can be extremely powerful. It can help you get into such a deeper state, such an incredible bliss, such harmony that you can feel. It is like nobody is saying anything. There's no sound whatsoever, but you can feel everyone, and you can feel the harmony in the room. And it's a very special feeling. If you can find a group like that, that would be great. Okay, moving on. So I recommend the most basic of the most basic, and that is to sit on the floor, upright posture, dignified, comfortable, use a cushion, definitely. Even advanced practitioners use a cushion. And definitely cross your legs, but this is important. Don't feel like you have to get into the lotus position. Many people are flexible enough to do that. Great. A lot of people aren't. So I would say no point to force yourself into an uncomfortable posture that will only distract you from the goal of going deeper into a meditative state. So, in my opinion, there's no absolute need for mudra, but I would encourage you to try it for yourself and see. And last time I did quite a bit on the stock photography meditation, and that's when you see pictures of very attractive models doing this, and my recommendation is that let the arms down, be comfortable, relax. Don't try to hold it up for half an hour. You're gonna be working against yourself. That's what I mean by stock photography meditation. And quite a few photographs with models in business attire meditating, and there I would also say dress comfortably, rather than to be in suit and tie. Last time I did say that there is a specific point that photographers want to accomplish with that type of photography. They want their photos to be licensed in different articles. Oftentimes it's about calmness in the workplace, in which case they got to have the model with the business attire. Okay, sure. But let's not mistake that to mean that that's what you have to do. Okay. So I think just one more slide and that's it. So spiritually oriented items like candle, religious symbols can help set your mind at ease. So it isn't absolutely necessary. If you want to know what the Tao cultivators here at the temple do, in their home shrine, they usually have that candle holder in the middle. That flame represents the Tao. In a Tao shrine, that's actually the only requirement. For Chinese Tao cultivators, they oftentimes will put Buddhas, and that's because of popularity of Buddhism in China. They feel like it's not really a shrine unless you have a Buddha there. Okay. Now, in the actual teaching, it is very clear that you can set up the figurine of Buddha if you want to, but you don't have to if you don't happen to have that. The Tao itself is not the Buddha. The Tao itself is not a deity. It doesn't have a face. It doesn't have a body. It doesn't have a human likeness. So a flame is as good a representation for that force as anything else. So a couple of simple types of meditation to start with. The first is called body scan meditation. When I encountered body scan meditation for the first time, I thought that it was very similar to hypnosis that I had experienced previously, where you are directed to focus your consciousness to a part of the body, usually starting at your toes, on your feet, and slowly work your way up one body part at a time. By the time you get to the upper part of your body, you are completely relaxed. It's working off of the same principle. And it's, the only difference is that in hypnosis, if someone is doing that for you, you may be reclining, you may be lying. With meditation, you're sitting upright, but the effect is very similar. Either way, whatever gets you to the point of relaxation, so you can let go and go deeper into a meditative state where you can experience your connection with the Tao. Any way to get there is a good way of getting there. Breathing meditation is usually the second thing that's introduced in a mindfulness practice. There are mindfulness programs at universities and also at hospitals, and usually they start people out with body scan meditation, and then they advance people into breathing meditation. And all that means is that as you're sitting there composing your mind, that you pay attention to the breath, to breathing in, breathing out, and every part of the process, including the part where the in-breath becomes the out-breath. You're paying attention even to that, to the transition. It's the entire thing. There are other kinds of meditation. There's mantra meditation. That's what we typically say, just go with Om, O-M. There are also different kinds of mantras, different sounds that you can make. I really haven't seen a great deal of difference in the different sounds, although in pseudoscience, it is often said that if you put your hands into different mudras, different hand gestures, and make different sounds, that it can direct your energy for different kinds of benefits. Honestly, that's actually never been proven, so I prefer to just keep it simple. So, just a couple more things before we take a break. Second from last, stray thoughts as they occur. So I talked about this when we had lunch together. It's worth repeating that it's inevitable that as you meditate, you will have stray thoughts that come into your mind. There are multiple ways that teachers have taught to deal with that. One way I didn't talk about before, let me share with you now. If you think about stream of consciousness as an actual stream, if you visualize a stream in your mind, maybe like a mountain stream that's flowing, a free-flowing mountain stream, a babbling brook, it's very relaxing, it's beautiful. That is your stream of consciousness. Think about stray thoughts as the leaves that are falling on that stream and being washed, floating, downstream. So when you attempt to hold on to those thoughts, like, okay, I gotta remember to take out the trash, or I gotta remember to do the laundry, I gotta do this and that. When is that report due? Stuff like that. It is like setting up a metal grate in the stream to catch all the stray thoughts and leaves that are flowing through. So you accumulate more and more of it until you begin to impede the flow of the stream. So if you let go of the grating, just let it flow down without attempting to stop it or to hold on to any of them, then you will find that the meditation will proceed much more smoothly as a result. So that's example number one. Metaphor number one, stream of consciousness, think of that as a literal stream in the mountain. Metaphor number two, think about the mind as a pond, as a pool of water. The more agitated, the more ripples you see on the surface of the water, that represents how agitated the mind is. So the goal is to end up with a pool of water that's perfectly still so that it's a perfect mirror of the surroundings. So when a pebble is thrown into the pool, it causes a little splash. That is a stray thought that's coming into it. If someone dives into it, does a cannonball, that's a big disruption. So that's the metaphor. Now think about stray thoughts that come in as a bird flying in the sky, and you notice the reflection in this perfectly still pool because it's the perfect mirror. So rather than to think of that as a pebble being thrown into it, think of it as this eagle flying overhead. You see the reflection, it's reflected in the pond, but you don't attempt to hold on to it, so the eagle flies away. When the eagle is gone, the surface is exactly the same as it was before, completely still. So that's what it means to not hold on to stray thoughts. Lastly, the last point is that when you do notice the stray thoughts, that's actually a moment of mindfulness. That's actually a very good thing. That's you reflecting on yourself. What am I doing? Oh, I am having a stray thought. I am now mindful that I am starting to drift away from mindfulness. That in itself is a good thing. So celebrate your conscious awareness of how that process is working in your brain. You becoming more mindful, it'll become more habitual. So more and more, it requires less and less effort for you to maintain that level of awareness on yourself. Lastly, and most importantly perhaps, is to experiment on your own. Different variations. What works really well for me may not work as well for you. So So one of the experiments that I've tried and worked really well for me is that in the morning, when I do my morning meditation, I sometimes will do meditative writing. All you do is that you can do this on a piece of paper, pen and paper, or just computers. I use computers myself. I'm too lazy to find where's that pen. Oh, this pen is all the way. Oh, so computers much easier. But the idea is that when you do meditative writing, you just write whatever comes to mind. There are absolutely no restrictions. It's not meant for anyone else but you. But a lot of times, you'll be surprised at what bubbles up from the subconscious to the conscious mind. And it can be revealing. And sometimes it's like, I have no idea where this is coming from, but this is pretty good stuff. I'm going to keep going. So that could be a lot of fun, too. So
let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架3鞠躬，1鞠躬，再鞠躬，3鞠躬，持架规则是1鞠躬，接班1鞠躬。Okay, everybody, we are done.
Participate in the Tao meeting by joining us online. For information, go to taoism.net/Tao.